I want to hear cannons. Three-step drop, goes on the end zone. Caught ball, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans reaches up with one hand and grabs it in.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
We don't even keep score. We just run that up and leave.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up the middle. Heads intercepted at the 40. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 29. 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast, live on YouTube today. I'm your host, as always, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, the Philly Bucs fan himself, Mr. Evan Wanish. Been a couple months since I called you the Philly Bucs fan himself, but for anyone confused, that title has not changed. I think honestly, ever since you just started writing for Bucs Nation, I just forget to throw it in there. It's a mouthful. It's one hell of a title.
It's a lot, yeah. It is. When you have more than one like name before your name, it can be a lot. So it's okay.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of pro wrestlers have that same issue over their time. But today we are here to talk a little bit more about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' Week 2 victory over the Chicago Bears. But we have also got some running back rumors regarding the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which are always fun this time of year. For anyone who missed it, running back 2 for the Bucs, Chase Edmonds, went down in that game against Chicago. Seems like the Bucs are going to lose him to injury for at least a couple of weeks, as now he has a very high possibility of winding up on the IR. So the Bucs are in a position now where they either have to power forward with what they already have at the running back position or potentially make a couple of phone calls. And one of the phone calls reportedly made was to the LA Rams this week, who are looking to ship off running back Cam Akers, who is kind of in a very, very tough spot to be in with the Rams. I got to say, you hear more and more about how Sean McVay just doesn't really like the guy. Like, I don't know what's going on with him in LA, but it is not working out. And here we are coming up on week 3. He is a potential trade candidate. A couple of other teams have called, but the Bucs were one of them. Now, that obviously does not mean a deal gets done, and that obviously does not mean the Bucs do not have faith with what they have left in that running back room, which is what they have said before. But Evan, what is your first reaction to potential news of the Bucs being interested in Cam Akers?
Yeah, the interesting thing, and not to pour completely cold water on this, but Scott Reynolds had come out, article from Pewter Report, and kind of did just that. On the Buccaneers' possibility for trading for Cam Akers. And I mean, we'll still discuss it. I'm not going to completely, not discuss it because, it was news, right? It was news reported by Jordan Schultz, who's a pretty credible, like analyst and reporter in his own right. So Scott Reynolds did say, though, Pewter Report has learned that it might have been the other way around, with the Rams calling to see if the Bucs were interested in dealing for the former Florida State star instead. And he also says that the Bucs won't be trading for Cam Akers. But with that being said, he said, it's something yet, right? And it could happen. So I think the Bucs, maybe they weren't the ones to reach out, but they have clearly had some dialogue, I think, with the Rams over the past few days about a potential trade. And just like you said, I don't know if it means like, look, they don't think Rachaad White's the guy or anything like that. I don't know if it means that, because Cam Akers is a fine running back. Like he's fine, but like he's not like, it's not like they're talking about Jonathan Taylor. It's not like they're talking about something like that. Cam Akers is more of a complementary piece, a guy that you can throw into your rotation of backs more so than you're going to give this guy the ball 20 times a game. not really that type of player. So I don't really think it has much to do with Rachaad White. I will say I have been a little bit disappointed with Rachaad White through the first 2 weeks. I know he was better last week. It still didn't feel like he was much better last week, honestly. Like I was said on the post-game show, like I was surprised like they had that many rushing yards because it didn't feel like that. So I do think though he has a few more weeks to sort of rev it up. Like I'm not really overly concerned. Just a little bit disappointed here in the early going, but hopefully he can get going a little bit more as he gets more acclimated to this new offense and everything. So he's still trying to learn it, and I think that the Bucs maybe acquisition of probably not, but maybe acquisition of Cam Akers would provide just more depth because honestly, for all the hype Sean Tucker got in the preseason, like. Yeah, it's been really like, I mean, he didn't really show up at all versus Chicago. Like, they get 7 carries for 8 yards or something. Like, it wasn't that productive against Chicago. Hasn't really been much of a factor in the passing game, also. So, he's been a little bit disappointing. At the same time, he's an undrafted free agent. Like, he's sort of what you get, I think. Could he have been a draft pick? Yeah, for sure. Like, if he was 100% healthy. But at the same time, like, you're sort of starting to see like he would have been a day 3 pick, and there's a reason for that. So as far as Akers goes, like I said, we'll get into the player, but I don't think their potential trade for him would signal that they just don't like Rachaad White anymore. I just think you want to have options, and I think that would just be another option they would have.
Let's talk a little more about the running back position and some of the guys that are going to be available. Now, I don't see the Bucs adding another running back by trade. Like, that doesn't seem like a very likely option for me. If something ends up working out for Cam Akers, that's the one situation I kind of seeing it playing out that way. But one, do you think the Bucs look at another running back in free agency? 2, do you think that they are more than confident with who they have left? Because Keyshawn Vaughn, we were just talking about him a couple of weeks ago, having to step up on the roster, was pretty close to being cut. He had that unexcused day at Buccaneers practice. He wasn't in a very good place with the team. That is yesterday's news, according to Todd Bowles, and it seems like he is locked in ready for the season. But we already know what Keyshawn Vaughn is here in Tampa Bay. He's been here long enough to where we know he's probably not going to introduce that much of a significant difference to this Buccaneers run game at this point in the season. So some of these free agent guys still available. Kareem Hunt still very much still out there. Kenyon Drake still out there. J.D. McKissick, who is a name that I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard in a while, but just another cheap option. A couple of former Bucs, Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones, also still available. So maybe not anyone off of that list of names, but are there any other free agent running backs the Bucs could seriously consider adding, you think?
I'm not really sure. Obviously, they have Patrick Laird on their practice squad. I think this would likely mean that Keyshawn Vaughn's active on game days. I believe he's been inactive the past 2 weeks. So I would assume this means Keyshawn Vaughn enters to the active roster on game days. I think they want to wait and see first. I think they want to maybe wait a week or 2, maybe. Maybe something happens over the bye week if they're not really happy with how their backs have been. I think Kareem Hunt's probably destined to just head back to Cleveland now. He visited there today with Nick Chubb's injury. I would assume that's what's going to happen there. And like you said, I don't necessarily think they would pick up any of those names anyway. Those are some bigger names, and I honestly think they want to give Rachaad White a shot. Like, I don't think they want to take away more snaps from him. I think they want to continue to give him a shot, and they just need some depth. So I think they're going to have Vaughn on the active roster, have somebody else be inactive for game days, and then see how it goes first before making any other move. I don't know if they'd call up Patrick Laird from the practice squad as like a practice squad elevation. That's a possibility for game days. But I would say that probably the most likely scenario is probably them passing on a free agent and instead trying to just roll with White, Tucker, and Vaughn as your 3 on game days.
We talk about this Buccaneers offense moving forward into the season. Let's talk about what's missing from this run game, or what feels like it's missing. I think the explosive runs are probably what we feel and watch the most, the lack thereof of explosive runs. Like we talked about, the longest run on the ground for the Bucs in week 1 was about 6 yards, and the longest run for the Buccaneers in week 2, doesn't feel like it was much longer.
I believe it was 13.
Right. So, I mean, we're getting better week after week, but you haven't really seen Sean Tucker, Rachaad White, or anyone in that backfield break open for a big 15-plus yarder, right, where, he's got nothing but daylight ahead of him, and there's just a couple of guys chasing him down from behind. That's what you haven't seen happen. You haven't seen this run game hit that home run yet. Now, I think it will happen at some point this season, but when you look at the Bucs running game over these first 2 games, yes, it has improved week to week, but what do you feel like is missing ultimately? Like, what is the biggest thing that, as of right now, we just have not seen from Rachaad White or Sean Tucker or anyone else back there?
Well, when it comes to Rachaad White, a lot of people compare him to Le'Veon Bell, and I think we talked about this, like the comparison to Le'Veon Bell because of the patience and everything, and that patience can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing because sometimes you can just be too patient. And I think at times, especially in a Minnesota game, he's just too patient. He doesn't hit the hole quick enough, and in the NFL, those holes close like that. So, they're open for a split second, and if you don't hit it, you missed it. So I do think he needs to be a little bit better with vision, a little bit better with his burst and acceleration, like his decisiveness, his decision making needs to be a little bit quicker. I do believe on when to hit the hole, where to hit it, and how to power through that. As for Sean Tucker, I think kind of the same thing, but I also think, like, again, he's an undrafted free agent. He's trying to get his feet wet in the NFL. So I'm not going to give him too much crap for anything. I do think, again, Rachaad White, they're trying out new blocking schemes. They're trying out new runs, new running schemes. So I am going to give him a little bit of a break for the first 2 games. And we'll see at the bye week. We'll see after the next 2 games. Can they get a little bit better? It's not going to be easy because, Philly's front 7 is one of the best in football. So, like, it's not an easy test. I think that the Bears and Vikings were much easier tests than, Rachaad White was kind of up and down in both. So, I just think I think Rachaad White has the talent. I just think right now it's not all coming together right away. And that's not a bad thing because it's a long season and we're only through 2 games. At the same time, though, you would like to see that sooner rather than later, I think.
Yeah, and Dave Canales has said before that this is a project. Like, this is something that is going to take a couple of weeks. And we should have known that coming into the season with an inexperienced offense, a first-year play caller. Just the inexperience in the running back room alone is enough context clues for us to gather that, like, hey, maybe this isn't going to be a 1 to 2 week turnaround on the Buccaneers run game. But I have no problem with what we've seen so far. I do agree that it does have to be more explosive. We've been missing that big home run ability. We haven't seen anyone really bust through the tacklers, get through that second wave, and then just find all of that field. But I think it is getting better, and I think it is something the Bucs are going to build. But yeah, a huge test coming up on Monday Night Football this week. And for an undrafted free agent, Sean Tucker, who is now going to be your running back 2 for the foreseeable future, it's going to be a pretty tough test for him alongside Rachaad White to get that run game going. But wanted to talk a little bit more about the game from last Sunday and move away from the offense, talk a little bit more about the other side of the football. Wanted to talk about Devin White in particular because after week 1, we were singing his praises. Him and Levante David, they were monsters on that defense. I mean, arguably, they were the 2 most active players on the field against the Vikings in Minnesota. But week 2, seems like they quieted down a little bit. Not the best day for Devin White. He had one of his best pass coverage games week 1 against the Vikings, graded out ridiculously high. I think he was a top 2 graded defensive player for the Bucs. But again, we talk about that week 2 performance and the inconsistency. This is a guy on a contract here. Now, listen, it was just week 2, and it was just 1 game, so I'm not going to sit here and harp on it. But what did you think of maybe the lack of Devin White week 2 against Chicago? Because I think there were a couple of moments where he was definitely needed out there.
Yeah, and the weird thing was, it's not like he was... there's been games where, you look at the box score and he's not really on there, but you also watch the game and you're like, yeah, like... they're targeting him and he's missing tackles and he's blowing assignments and coverage. And in this game, there wasn't much. I think he might have missed like 1 like impact tackle. Could have had the running back wrapped up for a loss. The running back got away from him, got a gain of a few. Like, there wasn't much that like he did. I don't really know how else to say it. A quiet game. It might have been the scheme that asked them, to do that. Honestly, I thought Levante David, besides the one third down stop that he had, I thought Levante David had a fairly quiet game as well, from the linebacker position. So I thought it was a weird day for the linebackers. I'm not overly concerned. And also, like, this is year 5 of Devin White. Like, you sort of know, I think, what to expect. Like, you're not going to get a consistently great player week in and week out. Even if he has a good year and the Bucs pay him, like, or somebody else does, I just don't think you're going to get, for 17 weeks, you're not going to get a great linebacker every single week. And I don't even think he was that bad on Sunday. It's just sometimes the ball just don't come your way. Like, sometimes the play just doesn't happen for you, and that happens sometimes. So it was a weird game because, like, it is like, okay, you can criticize him, but at the same time, like, it's not like he was out there getting completely exposed. It's just he wasn't involved in a lot of these plays.
Yeah, and I mean, it happens. This isn't the first time we've seen a quiet game from the linebacker core, and maybe that's just the way that it shakes out. But 2 combined tackles for Devin White week 2, which is, again, out of the norm for him. So when you're such a polarizing player that people tend to notice more when you're not around than when you are, that's definitely saying something. So hopefully Devin White can rebound next week. Let's talk some more about just some of the things we didn't get some time to cover on the post-game show. I guess this goes back to the offense, but it's just a general team discipline thing. I thought the penalties this week were not concerning, but they did get worse than they did week 1. 7 penalties for, I believe, over 50 yards for the Bucs. And there were a couple of penalties that you wouldn't think were too costly, but the one that I think of the most was on the Chase McLaughlin field goal attempt that was blocked. There was a holding call. Or I'm sorry, it was a false start on Tristan Wirfs on a 3rd and 1 from the Bears 17. Forced the Bucs to throw the ball. Baker's pass fell incomplete. Bucs had to settle for a field goal. Kick is blocked. Bucs win the game, but the kick is blocked and you still leave points on the field because of ultimately a penalty that occurred a couple of plays earlier. So stuff like that. We talk about some things that need to be cleaned up for the Bucs getting ready to play better teams. And the Eagles are going to be the best team they've played so far this year. Stuff like that can't happen against the Eagles. You can't leave points on the field against a defending NFC champion. I think there's a lot of things the Bucs have shown us that they can do well, and they probably will do well against the Eagles on Monday night. But penalties, before it gets too far out of hand, I'm sure that the team knows that, but stuff like that's got to be fixed, especially because it was a penalty from Tristan Wirfs, which is even more rare.
Yeah, that definitely hurts. And just like you said, I think even like a team that's slight, like, I think the Saints are probably they're better than the Bears. Like, you can't even do that against a team like the Saints. Like, it just, you can get away with those kind of mental errors, those kind of mistakes against the bad team like the Bears, but it's not going to work against these other teams. So especially when that results in 0 points, like 0, and that's just, it's going to kill you. Like, it's just going to be an absolute, I mean, it felt like right then and there as soon as it happened. Like, as soon as it went from 3rd and 1 to 3rd and 6, it felt like it was a drive killer. It honestly did. And, they had a few mistakes, not even just like penalties, but a few mistakes like that like could have really killed the drives. David Wells, that would have set up a 3rd and short, ends up fumbling the ball. It goes all the way back to 3rd and 14. Now, I believe the next play, that 3rd and 14, was the Baker Mayfield Mike Evans touchdown. That's not going to happen every time. Most of the time, it's not. Like, that's not going to work out for you that way. So yeah, they have a lot to clean up, despite being 2-0. 2-0 is 2-0. We talked about that before, and a win is a win. You take it any way you can get it, especially in the NFL. But, like, in order to beat these other teams coming up on their schedule, they're going to have to play better. And the next 5 games that they have, those teams have 2 losses. The Eagles are 2-0. The Saints are 2-0. The Lions are 1-1. Falcons are 2-0, and the Bills are 1-1. So, not going to be easy. And the Lions, they went into Kansas City, beat the Chiefs, and the Bills is a short week on the road. Like, it is, it's coming up on a little bit of a rough stretch here for the schedule. Even though you had the bye week in there, it can be a tough stretch. So they're going to have to clean some things up. And just like you said, like, about the penalties. They know that. Like, they know full well that they have to get it better, and they know that, like, yeah, against Chicago, you might get away with it, but against Philadelphia, probably not. So we'll see what type of effort and, like, hopefully a mistake-free game that they come out with on Monday night.
Yeah, the Bucs this year with their coaching staff, they don't strike me as an undisciplined team. They just strike me as a team that played an undisciplined game. And sometimes in the NFL, that is
big difference.
Yeah, big difference, like you said. The Bucs have also been incredibly good on third down this year. So we talk about that 3rd and 1 false start, which ultimately leads to the Baker incompletion. That's only one of 3 missed third down conversions they have so far this season. The Buccaneers are 20 for 23 on third down so far this season, which is insane, right? It's even more crazy when you think about the slow start they had week 1 against Minnesota. Like, aside from the false start that we just mentioned week 2 against Tristan Wirfs, and then a couple of the mishaps they had in the first half of that Vikings game, that's about it. I mean, they've been a well-oiled machine. Red zone scoring needs to be a little bit better. There were a couple of trips to the red zone that kind of like last year, you weren't able to get that home run. And again, you can get away with that taking 3 points against the Bears, but not always going to work. But, the overall efficiency of this Buccaneers offense is certainly something that we cannot ignore, because third down in particular, they have been damn near perfect. It's kind of an anomaly to see. Let's talk about another guy on this defense I wanted to get your thoughts on. We'll kind of go back and forth, I guess, on both sides of the ball here. Jamel Dean has popped up on some people's most disappointing list from last week, and it seems like a quiet season for him so far. This time into the 2022 season, he was fresh off of that game against the Saints, had the big-time interception deep down the field. We were talking more and more about, hey, he's got a contract year. Jamel Dean's going to ball out, and ultimately Jamel Dean was probably the best corner on the team in 2022, but he's been kind of quiet. The Bucs seemed like they played a lot of zone in that game against Chicago, so obviously getting beat early is one thing. But other than that, it's been a slow start for Jamel Dean over these first 2 games. What did you think? What do you think of him so far this year?
It's weird. The game against Chicago, like, you see him run, it's like he's got, like, cinder blocks in his pants.
Oh no!
I don't know. Like, it was like it was strange. I don't know. Maybe it was the heat that was maybe getting to him a little bit. I don't know. It definitely could have been. I know it was getting to some of the Bears players there. Obviously, he was getting to Mike Evans a little bit. He had to come out a couple of times.
Mike Evans took a 70-yard reception and then threw up immediately on the sideline.
Yeah, but Jamel Dean didn't run 70 yards. Like, Jamel Dean wasn't running like that. It was a little bit strange. Like I said, I don't know. Now, he did get the wind knocked out of him late in the game. Had to come out. I'm not sure if he came back, but he did tell reporters, I believe, that he's okay. So there's no worry. I don't think there's any. Now, the Bucs didn't practice. We're recording this on Tuesday. The Bucs didn't practice on Tuesday, and they don't practice on Wednesday either because of the Monday night game. So we won't know any sort of injury report until Thursday. So he did say he was okay. He just got the wind knocked out of him. But yeah, it was a weird game, and it's been a weird season. It's only 2 games. Like, I'm not going to be too big on it because it is just 2 games, but it has been like a weird season for Jamel Dean. So yeah, I'm not really 100% sure. I think he's going to be fine, like, in like the long term. Hopefully they can get Carlton Davis back in the fold, and they can have their starting corners. Maybe, Dean will look a little bit better then, being, basically the number 2 corner, being put in a little bit better spot. So we'll see what happens there.
Christian Izien out of the nickel corner spot. We know the type of season he's had already. 2 games, 2 interceptions for the undrafted free agent. Our buddy Richard T from LA brings up in the chat, Zion McCollum outplayed Jamel Dean last Sunday. Did you see that?
Yeah, I thought McCollum had his moments. I did think Izien bailed out McCollum a few times. There was a few times McCollum missed a tackle and Izien was there. Izien's been a really short tackler so far this season. Besides really that one touchdown by Alexander Madison, and that's still that's an open field tackle. Should make it, but it's a tough one. But yeah, there was a few times where McCollum didn't complete the tackle. Izien was able to cover up for him, but had his near first career interception. Almost had his first career interception. Looked like he did. At first, I didn't see it really, the ball bobble or anything. Thought he had it. Didn't have it. Is what it is. But yeah, I do think that McCollum played well, and it's a positive sign for his development as a player and for the Bucs defense. I think it is a big thing that they can maybe have somebody in that corner room that if Jamel Dean were to go down or Carlton Davis were to stay down, a toe injury is a little bit tricky. There's no guarantees back. So I think they could have faith in Zion McCollum there after a pretty strong performance.
Yeah, and listen, if we're going to nitpick anything else on this podcast today, I do want to take a second and talk about the tackling on this Buccaneers defense. Early in the year, stuff like this is going to be an issue. Again, it's one of those things that, just like on the other side of the football, it's going to take a couple of weeks to kind of get to where it needs to be. These teams get better the more that they play. So stuff like this is going to get cleaned up over the course of the season. But it's been a problem in Todd Bowles' defenses before. That's just the tackling. It's just cleaning it up, right? The Bucs defense has been pretty good at keeping plays in front of them so far, but if you can't do that and you whiff a tackle on a 5-yard, quick slant route, well, that 5-yard reception is going to turn into 11, 12, 13 if you don't have two guys right there immediately who can bring down the ball carrier. So I do think that's one more thing the Bucs need to work on. Is just bringing down the ball carrier after that reception. We've seen it time and time again over the years where you miss one tackle, another guy maybe comes up short, and then a 5-yard catch turns into 15 and a first down. So stuff like that, again, talking about things that aren't going to fly against better football teams, you got to clean it up. And there's still some stuff that the Buccaneers do have to clean up. A couple more things I wanted to ask you about before we start to wrap it up. I know it's kind of a short show today. Did you get a chance to watch Monday Night Football last night? Saints-Panthers. If you didn't, I don't blame you because you didn't miss anything at all. It was one of the most boring games I've ever watched in my life.
Yes, I did watch a little bit. Yeah. I mean, neither one of those teams look overly impressive to me. I know there's a lot of hype about Carolina, and they just look a little rough.
It looked like Thursday Night Football. Both games last night. Both games were boring. I'm not the biggest fan of like a doubleheader for Monday Night Football.
I love it. How can you not love it?
It's okay. I can understand the pros and cons. I was talking to my buddy about it, and I said, I understand from a viewer perspective having multiple games to watch is cool. I think it's cool having two games to switch back and forth. But if I'm a fan of my team and they're playing on Monday Night Football, like the Bucs are very much next Monday night, I feel like having two games kind of takes away the prestige of playing on prime time to begin with. Like Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, everyone's watching you.
See, I don't care. I don't. And here's the thing. Over the years, Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football have both become, I think, a little more watered down because almost everybody gets a Monday Night Football and a Thursday Night Football game nowadays. Like Sunday Night Football is the premier one, right? I don't think they'll ever do a doubleheader Sunday Night Football thing. But everybody now gets a Monday Night Football or a Thursday Night Football game. So it's not what it used to be, right? So I did want to answer a few questions in the chat. G Vegas said, how much do you think Evan's camp is demanding? I can't really speak for my camp. I don't know how much we are demanding, but no. So
we still got a couple months till the offseason. We'll negotiate that when we come to it.
Yeah, when that time comes, well, I'll let my agent handle that. But no, the rumor, and this was never confirmed by anybody or anything. The rumors was that he was maybe looking for a similar contract that Cooper Kupp got from the Rams, which was a 3-year deal worth a little over $80 million in total. Obviously the Bucs did not agree with that, or else the contract would have been signed. I think the Bucs were probably a little bit closer to like a Chris Godwin type deal, or it's like about 3 years, $60 million.
Yeah, closer
probably around
to that $20 million average.
Yeah, probably somewhere around there. So that's what I would guess. And then Bucs Raised Bolts also said, what price on Cam Akers, what to give up? I would imagine it'd be like a 6th round pick at most. I can't imagine it's going to cost much. It's widely documented that the Rams do not really want him around anymore. He's not like some high profile Jonathan Taylor type player either. So I would imagine you'd be able to get him fairly cheap, maybe at the most like a conditional 5th round pick. if the conditions like Tampa Bay has to win their division or something, and then you get the 5th round. I don't know, but like I would imagine it's not going to cost much at all.
And that's why we talked about Cam Akers being, in my opinion, the only solid trade option for the Bucs right now, if they even want to pursue a running back, because there's no one else out there that they could trade for. Jonathan Taylor, no way. There's no chance he ends up in Tampa Bay. Like, there's a couple of other names that they could target, but I just don't think it's very realistic. But like you had brought up, the price tag for Akers is going to be relatively low, considering he's already not favored in LA. Guy had a decent season last year, too. I think he had 7 or 8 touchdowns last year, almost 1,000 yards, but not quite. I think he came up a couple hundred short. But, he's been an on-again, off-again type of player. Had a touchdown week 1 for the Rams. Literally scored a touchdown last week. And here he is on the trade block. But, yeah, definitely an interesting situation with him in L.A. I can't remember the last time we saw a Bucs running back not necessarily run out of town, but, again, the more you hear about the details between, Cam Akers and the Rams and Sean McVay not being too high on this guy, kind of a tough spot to be in. G. Vegas, the moderator, with a follow-up question here. Does Coach Wanish demand some Deion Shane's Wendy Biggie Meal a Day and the Take Bag segment? As long as we play his theme music, I believe that's usually how it works, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, dude, I want to see does any of you guys remember what my theme music is? I know obviously Rhett does. I want to see if any of the chat does. Really quick, before we wrap up, we'll let you guys try and answer that.
I will be shocked. If anyone knows this, but Willie Beeman should know this. G. Vegas should probably know this. Gene maybe should know this. There's a couple people in here, I think, who should know this one, but it's been a long time since we've acknowledged it.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time. So not going to shame anybody if they don't. But if you do, put it in the chat. Really quick, and I'm not trying to burst anyone's bubble or anything like that, but the Bucs are 2-0, and that's great. However, like, I still think there are some questions, like, because here's the thing. They're 2-0. The 2 teams that they beat are combined 0-4. Okay. Like, I think the Vikings are a fine team. Like, I think the Bears are bad. Like, the Bears are a bad team. The Vikings, that's a good win to go on the road in Minnesota, beat that team week 1. But as far as, like, the expectations for the rest of the season, I just want to keep it into perspective. Like, the 2018 Bucs went 2-0 to start the year, beat the defending Super Bowl. Like, the Eagles at that time were the defending Super Bowl champions. They went into New Orleans week 1, beat the Drew Brees and the Saints, and then also, went and beat the defending Super Bowl champions and the Eagles to start 2-0. They finished 5-11. So I'm not saying that's going to happen with this team. However, like, I think it's a big test coming up, these next 5 games that I mentioned. I think it's a big litmus test to see, okay, we know this team can beat the bad teams, right? That they can beat the Vikings, they can beat the Bears. Can they beat a good team? Can they hang with a good team? And I think these next 2 games before this bye week is going to tell you a lot, because I don't know how good the Saints are, but, like, I think going into New Orleans, like, that's a tough game. I think the Saints probably better than the Vikings and definitely better than the Bears. So, like, I do think it's a tough game. So I'm curious to see how they're going to play these next couple of games. I think it's going to be pretty critical on an outlook for how the rest of the season is going to go.
I think there's going to be a heavy emphasis on playing a clean game. And the way that we have seen this Buccaneers offense win games so far is by effectively running the football and winning the time of possession battle. I mean, winning the turnover battle is obviously going to go a long way as well. And we'll talk more on the game preview coming up later this week on what kind of shape the Eagles are in. We already heard Jalen Hurts say that his shoulder's only at 60 to 70%, which does bode well for the Bucs, but still means he can probably air it out on you. Playing a clean game, winning the turnover battle is one thing, but for the Buccaneers offense, the biggest thing that I am looking for is if they can effectively control the clock again the way that they have. In the run game, like we had talked about in the first half of the show, is going to be a huge, huge factor in whether they are able to do that effectively or not.
Too legit to quit. Too legit.
Well, I think that song means It's about time to wrap up this week's episode of the Cannon Fire podcast. Evan, any final thoughts?
Not really. Great song. It's a great theme song.
Yeah,
really is a great theme song. So, not really. Final thoughts are, obviously the Bucs are 2-0. Now you're moving on to Philly. So we'll have the game preview out sometime this week. Not sure if it'll be Friday. Might be Friday. Might not be. Because the game's on Monday night. So
right.
We'll see. Might want to wait till the final injury report's out and everything like that. So we'll see. But we will have a game preview out either way. So we'll see if the Bucs can go 3-0 for the first time since 2005. They've been 2-0 a bunch of times, but have failed to go to 3-0.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the rest of the way this season ends up playing out. I'm excited. This is one of the more exciting seasons in recent memory, and it's crazy because I say that off of the heels of Tom Brady. Don't get me wrong; those were all-time great seasons, like unmatched levels of energy. But when we get back into the dirt and we get back into the nitty-gritty of building this team with the resources the Bucs have. Just the improvement we've seen week to week, what this team looks like on a week-in, week-out basis gets me excited because I still, after 2 games, still don't entirely know what to expect. And, that's fun. By year 3 of Brady, we knew what to expect. And even then, we didn't exactly see what we expected. So,
yeah.
Thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight live on YouTube. I know it was a shorter show, but not that much to talk about. Just wanted to cover some things that we missed from the game reaction stream and, of course, talk about the potential Cam Akers news. I guess we can announce this here now because we'll say it again later this week, but there will not be a post-game call-in show this coming Monday night for Bucs Eagles. Pretty sure I will be at the game in attendance, and it's also going to be late as hell. I know it's the 7 o'clock game, right? So it's the first of the 2 Monday night games, so I should be getting out of there at a decent time, which bodes well for getting home and getting enough sleep to be ready to go at 4:30 in the morning for work the next day. But no call-in show that night, so be on the lookout for that Tuesday. We'll probably be live sometime that day taking your calls and, of course, talking about the game, win, lose, or draw. Thank you again, Richard T. from the West Coast, G Vegas and Willie Beeman, the moderators holding it down. Hello, Sue Wanish. Will the Brewer is in here as well. KIF. Our buddy Gene Thomas from Buck What You Heard. And anybody else that I may have missed. Christopher Cole, Family First 04, Bucs Nation. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily, the #1 Buccaneers fan page on Instagram. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. What you got this week?
Yeah, obviously going to be focused on the Eagles now. So going to have my X Factor player to watch out sometime this week before the game. So be on the lookout for that.
Sounds good. Last but not least, you can find myself Instagram and Twitter at Rhettacus, RHETT. AKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. Our game preview show expected to be Saturday, but maybe we'll jump on here between now and then and talk to you guys again regarding the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Be on the lookout for some extra content this week over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cannon Fire Podcast. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Devin Wanish. Thank you again for listening. We'll talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.